welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today I'm doing something a little different. Last month I won the NYSE Open number 8, which was a paper vintage tournament in Long Island, New York. I received a Black Lotus for winning. Pretty big prize. The Black Lotus is locked away at this point, but the trophy has arrived. I didn't have this in my first tournament report because it was so big I couldn't get it on the airplane, but I have it now. It is Atlas holding the world. It's enormous. It says on it, "Someday someone will best me, but it won't be today, and it won't be you," which is the flavor text of the card last word. That's over there. But what we're talking about here, I've already done a tournament report, but I have been provided with the raw coverage VODs from Jordan, who was the producer of the coverage for that event. You can see these same videos with commentary from the casters that day over on the NYSE Twitch VOD area, wherever those are found. But here I'm going to go over them again with my commentary instead. And that's what we're doing. So if you want to see some live paper vintage games played out in their entirety, this is a place to be. Let's get into it. I am watching these videos on YouTube. That's where they were provided to me in some unlisted videos. Round 1, I'm against Sahaj, and he started with a Black Lotus, Manifold Key, Underground Sea. Never really want to see Black Lotus out of your opponent's opening hand in Vintage. There were 2 setups at this event, by the way. There were 2 feature match tables. One of them has hand cams and microphones set up, and the other doesn't. Here we are at the table that doesn't have those things set up. So some of the videos we're going to get a lot more information than others. Right now, I can see what you could see. I had a turn 1 Oath, it got countered. That did put my opponent down to 2 cards in hand, though. And now they played Urza Saga and Mock Sapphire. They have 1 card left in hand. At this point, what I'm thinking about is Time Vault is the card I'm most scared of. I'm recognizing that they could hardcast a Force of Will, so that 1 card in hand could still stop me from doing stuff. The key is already in play, so I don't need to worry about Urza Saga tutoring up half of the combo. That half is already present. I just need to worry about getting this game won before my opponent finds Time Vault and takes all the turns forever. I Demonic Tutored here. I have a colorless floating. That's what that blue die is. And Time Walk. I believe the Demonic Tutor here was for either Tinker or Show and Tell, if memory serves me. Because like I said, I'm trying to win. 3 mana, Show and Tell is what I got. Opponent did not Force of Will. They did have a permanent to put into play, but it's just a Hull Breacher that Atraxa doesn't care about. And I'm flipping over the 10 cards from Atraxa. I found Boseiju, which means I don't care about Time Vault anymore. I'm taking the Oath. I could still cast that, have that in play. Took Force of Negation because I'm ahead now. I just need to not die. Also, Ancestral Recall doesn't do anything with Hull Breacher in play. Nothing good anyway. I could target them, or I could give them 3 treasures. And right now I'm thinking if I want these last 2 cards. You don't have to take every card, and in Oath you only have the 4 Atraxas to hit. So throughout these videos and the gameplay, you'll see me frequently declining to take a second Atraxa off of the first one. But here I just took Force of Negation, so I'm likely to take this blue card to make sure I can force if I need to. Alright, I must have had a blue card in hand. Atraxa's out of here. But from here I have already time walked. My list doesn't have Gaia's Blessing in it, or Yawgmoth's Will or anything, so the Time Walk is just gone. I'm going to have to attack and connect 3 times with Atraxa to win this game. And Urza Saga can make constructs. Those constructs can be made unblockable with Manifold Key. If my opponent comes up with Time Vault, I have to leave up mana to be able to respect that. But we know I have Boseiju and Force of Negation in hand, so I have that covered. Not seizing the 1 card they drew for their turn, keeping them hellbent. It was a Spell Pierce, which may or may not have mattered, but it's gone now. Construct in the end step. Here I also have to respect Time Twister because of the Hull Breacher in play. We know I have the counterspell, but also I don't really want to be put hellbent with my opponent having 7 treasures and a fresh grip. Another construct. And because of vintage mana bases, if you don't play a lot of this format, it might surprise you how big the first construct is. Like in Legacy, the first one's frequently 1/1 or 2/2. But the first construct here was already 4/4 because of Black Lotus, Mox Sapphire, Manifold Key. Those are two 6/6s. Opponent tutors Sensei Dividing Top, they know they're behind, just trying to find anything to happen here. I'm rolling for Mana Crypt every upkeep. Put that die on top of your deck so you don't forget upkeep effects, you don't want to get in trouble. And Atraxa just has to connect one more time here. I got a handful of answers, but they can start spinning top, they got a lot of mana. I feel good here, but recognize that could also lose. If they have something like Caracas, like I don't know what all the details of this deck. Dimir Hullbreacher is a archetype that I'm aware of, but sometimes that deck is also Esper. And Caracas is the #1 card here that I would be concerned about. Because I could counter a spell, I could Boseiju, a Time Vault, but if they could remove Atraxa in a way that's not a spell, even like channeling Otawara would be really good here, then I have no pressure and they have these giant monsters. But didn't find it and we're off to game 2. I'm on the draw for the second game, of course. My sideboarding would have been bringing in stuff like Nature's Claim and Force of Vigor. This appears to be a Time Vault-based artifact combo deck of some variety. They had another busted tons of mana turn. Just 6 mana on turn 2, easy money, to my Polluted Delta. And that's one of the things that comes up a lot when you're playing Vintage. When you have a 7-card hand that's just like land go, but you know your deck has Moxen, Black Lotus, all this stuff in it. What does your 7-card hand do? Would you rather have 7 cards in a plan, or would you rather try to go broken? And I don't remember my hand here. I don't think we're going to see it on camera. But I have to assume my hand is solid enough that I think that I'm the control deck in this matchup, because they are a Time Vault combo deck. And we just saw me Mystical Tutor for Force of Will. So I kept a turn 2 Orchard Oath with Force backup. And the flip side of dumping out a bunch of early artifact mana is your hand ends up pretty small. So opponent hardcast Force Negation, I pitchcast Force of Will, and my Oath is in, and they have a creature. And in the upkeep, Force of Vigor. Now we're seeing what I kept this hand on the strength of. Just a bunch of pitch interaction and an early Oath. That Force is targeting the Soul Ring and the Urza Saga. They were able to hardcast Force of Will, but it did tap them out for their turn. And they just cycled Lorien Reveal. Looks like they have 2 cards in hand, plus the land they're about to search for. Tundra. Remember when I mentioned Caracas in game 1, where we only saw Dimir cards, but sometimes these decks are Esper? Surprise, they're Esper. Well, that could represent Swords to Plowshares, which kills my Atraxa, but I still get the cards off it. Here comes an Oath flip, just running cards off the top of the deck. I do think I'm currently Hellbent, which means that Plow is definitely going to resolve. Oath milled over a bunch of stuff, and they did have the Plow. The Plow is in response to the Atraxa trigger. I gain 7, and then run 10 cards off the top. Bunch more Atraxas, which mean that unless I shuffle my deck somehow, both of those Atraxas are going to be in the bottom 6 or 7 cards of my deck, which means there's 1 Atraxa in the middle of my deck. And I don't want to mill myself out completely. You do have to respect that. And you see me put the 2 extra Oaths back because I just want more possible cards between Atraxa and 0 cards in deck. I got Abrupt Decay, Boseiju, and Tinker into my hand, and then I go to my draw step because that all happens in the upkeep. With Abrupt Decay and Boseiju, I'm unlikely to lose soon, and it's really about how deep is that 1 unknown Atraxa in my deck. And like if it's the card right above the 7 cards I just put on the bottom, it might actually be hard to win this game. But if it's the top card in my deck, this game will be trivial. That's just kind of the one variable right now. Okay, they're floating in mana, searching with Urza Saga. They could get something like Grafdigger's Cage here, or they could get the key and try to combo me. They did get the key. They know about Abrupt Decay and Boseiju. So they have to have a plan for those things, or just not a better tutor target here. Casting up Ponder. Crazy secret lair, weird eyeball art. Ponder. That's probably my least favorite Ponder, but it's still a Ponder, so you gotta respect it. And they did use their white source rather than Academy mana to do that, which leaves up Academy, which is more mana on my turn, but also taps them out of white. Okay, they've got a Wasteland for my Forbidden Orchard. giving them another spirit in response. Green floating. And I'm just going to bop off the Manifold Key. Why give them any opportunity to do anything with that? And then Oath Trigger. Oh, wow. Literally on top of the deck. Good stuff. That was the best possible outcome. I promise I didn't remember that's what happened when I said if Atraxa is the top card of my deck, this game will be trivial. But there she is. A ton of mana, a ton of cards. I took Mana Crypt over Black Lotus because we know I have Tinker in hand from earlier. And a big decision to make here is, do I want Mental Misstep to help fight over my Tinker? Or do I want Ancestral Recall to maybe not care so much about Tinker, end up taking the Ancestral? And then taking Thoughtseize means I could Thoughtseize them and then go land Tinker. It's better to Tinker without using your land drop yet because of Bolas's Citadel, but I would rather make sure it works. And the Thoughtseize, make sure the coast is clear. We see Caracas in hand though, so I actually do need to Tinker here and get something going that's not Atraxa, because I'm not going to beat that this turn. I do have Boseiju in hand that can kill Caracas, which is part of the deck building. There are 2 Boseijus and 1 Strip Mine in the deck that can answer Caracas. And I just went Mox Ruby pass without doing anything off of the Citadel. They play Caracas, and very smartly waited. They could have bounced Atraxa right there, attack for 2, but by waiting on the Caracas, then I don't get to Oath right away, because then I just have to Legend roll my thing and only have 1 left. So I announce combat, then they bounce Atraxa. That was really good timing. I've got a Brainstorm, which is busted with Bolas's Citadel, let me tell you. And I have an Atraxa in my hand that I could put on top of the deck, then immediately cast with Bolas's Citadel. Made my land drop, Boseiju the Caracas, and when all that's done, there's an Atraxa on top of my deck. What a surprise! Oath gets a lot of flack for being the worst Bolas's Citadel deck, but let me tell you, Bolas's Citadel is messed up, and it doesn't really matter how good your deck is at leveraging it once it's in play. All right, lands, Show and Tell, Cataxian Probe. I'm not taking Atraxa. Looks like I'm not taking Probe either. I'm just actually putting back a ton of extra cards here. Taking Long Goodbye, taking Black Lotus. I just don't want to get milled out here. And my hand is plenty rolled up to win the game on its own, and we just run Time Walk off the top. That's the real combo in this deck. Atraxa plus Time Walk. And then I'm in my walk turn, attack with Atraxa, and make my land drop off the top. It's Underground Sea. Here I'm just taking a slow Citadel because my build doesn't have any of that combo stuff I mentioned, like Yawgmoth's Will. So here you just stick Atraxa, answer the Caracas, and make sure it connects 3 times with your overwhelming card advantage. Here's the second hit. We got 1 more to go. Opponent just went Wasteland Go. Clearly they have nothing going on that could answer what I'm doing. And they're taking what might be their last draw step of the game. And there's the Handshake. Just overpower this deck, make sure you don't get comboed out, and then their deck's full of air, and my deck's full of Atraxas. On to the next round.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks, and groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
Here we have my first top 8 match. I believe I had 1 other camera feature during the Swiss, but it's not in these collection of videos I was sent. So we're going to watch all 3 of my top 8 matches. This first one against Michael, I did not know what he was on coming into the round, but luckily the top 8 was open deck list, so I know he's on Doomsday, which is a good thing to know about because it is one of my worst matchups, and I would like to plan appropriately. Opponent kept 7, I'm going to 6 here. If memory serves, I had a perfectly fine, kind of Oath hand that I would have kept in the blind, but knowing that it's Doomsday, you can't really mess around. One of the weaknesses of Oath is faster combo decks, faster and more focused combo decks, because Oath is really a control deck with this powerful engine in the middle of it. But that engine can also be clunky compared to the hyper-focused decks with Duress and Thoughtseize and Dark Ritual and 10 counter spells, and you are just not in the same class of combo deck as those decks, so you have to play the control deck. But then you're trying to be a control deck in a deck that is full of Atraxas and Oath of Druids and these clunkers. Forbidden Orchard is just a terrible land if you're not triggering Oath off of it. The opponent is immediately fetching an Underground Sea. And here I am hoping to see Ponder or Preordain and not Dark Ritual. We dodged. All right, Ponder to start. Ponder was recently unrestricted in Vintage. You could only play one of those for over a decade, and earlier this year, might have been the end of last year, it was unrestricted. And really, Doomsday is the only deck that adopted Ponder in the full boat immediately. And there's Black Lotus, right when you think the party's over. Black Lotus casting Necro, and we see my hand here is Force of Negation, Oko, Tinker, Force of Will. So I have double force, double blue card over there, and fended off that first wave. And just a land go from me. That looks like Ancestral Recall in my hand as well. It might be Time Walk. I can't get a great view, but there's definitely a blue piece of power in my hand right now. One of the cool things about Doomsday, though, from the other side, is that they're a mono blue deck that has to splash black, black, black for their namesake card. But this is a deck with like 10, 12, 14 cantrips, a bunch of forces and those sort of things. And with the Black Lotus out of the way, and my opponent playing basic island, they're actually in a bit of a squeeze to come back up with black, black, black to cast the next Doomsday. And they just cast Ponder and pass back. End step, I get an Underground Sea, and I have a Vampiric Tutor. And of course I didn't know it at the time, but we've seen on the camera that opponent has Force of Negation in hand, which cannot interact with this at this time because it's a Force of Negation. I'm pretty sure my hand right now is Force of Will, Ancestral Recall, Tinker, so I'm probably going to vamp for Mana Crypt to just shove the Tinker and try to get to work. Draw for turn. That is a Mana Crypt. That is a Tinker. There's the Force of Negation, exiling Time Walk. And here's my Force of Will, exiling Ancestral Recall. I am fully hellbent here. All in, but going all in on Bolas' Citadel, that's the kind of card you want to go all in for. Opponent cycling a Street Wraith, try to rebuy. Cycle another Street Wraith, trying to rebuy. Their hand is Mental Misstep right now. I don't know that at the time, but I can see it on video now. And looks like Tinker is good, and I still have a land drop available. What I was saying earlier about Oath being a control deck with some combos in the middle of it, Tinker for Citadel is the one truly stupid combo thing that this current iteration of Oath does. There's people building with Yawgmoth's Will and stuff, but this build really only does this. I cast a flash off the top of the deck, holding priority just in case I could brainstorm into Atraxa in response, but this is just to clear the top of my deck so I could keep casting spells. Land drop, Time Walk. I got that in the bank. Even if I run into a land, I get to keep going. You'll see a lot of us futzing with the iPad, the Life Total iPad. That was kind of a miserable part of the feature match, but it's fine. It comes with the territory. Thoughtseize off the top. I was actually pretty stoked to see this get Mental Misstepped because it cost me 1 life to cast Thoughtseize, and then it would cost 2 more if it resolved. And just to get a card out of the hand for 1 life instead of 3 with Bolas' Citadel running is great. And then I found a Demonic Tutor. I'm going to get Sensei's Divining Top here because Sensei's Top plus Bolas' Citadel is you can clear the top of your deck for as many cards as you have, or for as many life as you have, because you can tap top, draw the top card of your deck, replay top with Bolas' Citadel, and then there's a new card up there. But I found Brainstorm on top with Bolas' Citadel. So now 4 cards in my actual hand, including the Sensei's Top I just Demonic Tutored for, which I no longer have to spend 1 mana on. I can just put it on top of my deck and cast it with Citadel. Or I could Brainstorm into Atraxa and go to 2. She's huge, she has lifelink. Oh, I had the 1 life from the Brainstorm too, so I'm actually at 1 here. I have a Time Walk turn in the bank, so I know I can get back out of this. There's the top I just put on top. And this is actually a pretty bad Atraxa hit. It's just like more Atraxa's Oath and some mana. Take the top, take the Oath. I believe I took Oath here, not because I actually think I'm going to trigger it, but just so it's not in the pool of cards I could run into when I'm flipping with Bolas' Citadel. And then Vintage is full of 0 mana spells, so played Mox Emerald from 1 life, go back up to 8. I probably could have and should have played the Sensei's Divining Top when I had the 2 mana up before passing into my Time Walk turn. That seems kind of free to do looking at it now. I was probably just pretty hyped to run away with Bolas' Citadel in a terrible matchup. Taxing Probe sees Dark Ritual. Could have already suspected that the hand was nothing because opponent hasn't interacted yet. But now I know. There's the top. Could have been in play already last turn. And we're doing the top trick, draw a card, flip the top, pay a life, cast the top. And I just passed the turn with 7 cards in hand. I know what I have to beat here, and it's if opponent doesn't just rip Doomsday, I don't really care about anything. And if they do rip Doomsday, they have to make a pass pile because they don't have any other cards to start drawing with. And as long as I have 1 counterspell in my hand, I'm not losing this game. Make my land drop, attack. Opponent's now at 1, and I'm at 13. Bolas' Citadel plus steady giant chunks of life gain is a combo, by the way, if you haven't experienced that one before. And I have to go to cleanup, discard that Oath of Druids I took a million years ago. Opponent's last draw step. And they're just taking a treasure cruise. And I hardcast Force of Will, and that is that. Just flip the combo script on them with a double force into Tinker hand, and you gotta do what you gotta do. Like I said, the top 8 was open deck list, so my phone on the table right now, opponent has his phone on the table too. We were just accessing each other's deck list through Melee. And it is important to look at the whole list when you're sideboarding, because not only do you have to think about what sideboard cards they're going to bring in for you, but if you identify like 3 cards or 7 cards that are for your deck, you then want to check the main deck to figure out where those slots are going to come from. Because if I think my opponent's going to bring in like Grafdigger's Cages and stuff, they don't just add those to their main deck. They probably start cutting things like they play like fewer Street Race, or maybe they cut a Flusterstorm, or the list is in front of me right now, but you should try to be solving both sides of that puzzle if you have all that information available to you. Opponent quickly mulliganed a hand that we could briefly see on camera was just like a bunch of lands and a Flusterstorm. Nothing really going on there. I see Tinker in my hand. I think that's an Oath. I think I saw a Forbidden Orchard. I definitely have Ancestral Recall. I have kept my hand. I tend to keep hands with Ancestral Recall, especially against Doomsday, where if they put their shields down, you can kill them after a Doomsday with Ancestral Recall, because it can make either player draw 3. That is a double-edged weapon in exactly this matchup like that. Going to quickly go into 5. I don't see interaction in my hand. I see a Mox Jet, Vamp Tutor, Ancestral Recall, but there is not a Force of Will there. So I rolled the dice a little bit on the strength of Ancestral. Opponent's drawing a 5-er. I see lands, cantrips. This looks like a keep to me, what we could see here. There's a Treasure Cruise, a Preordain, a Gush, a Ponder. Looks like they bottomed Underground Sea and Treasure Cruise. Got Underground Sea, Preordain. And me knowing how this game goes, I'm looking at this opening hand and like, dang, they really did it. The Preordain found a Doomsday, bottomed some irrelevant card, kept Doomsday on top. I've got 2 Moxen and an Underground Sea. I think that's, I have Tinker in my hand as well. I could have shoved it there without a land drop, but the Ancestral Recall being a useful weapon, and if I Vampiric Tutor for Flusterstorm and then Tinker next turn with protection, or just hold up Ancestral with protection, I'm pretty solid to win this game. Here's a Ponder that sees Dark Ritual. So remember, their hand was just cantrips and lands to start, and they've cast 2 cantrips and came up with Dark Ritual Doomsday. And the opening hand had Gush in it, so this is actually a deterministic pile that can win right now if I can't disrupt it. And spoiler, we've seen my hand. I can't disrupt it. I have a choice right now whether to Ancestral myself. I could even fetch Vamp Tutor, Ancestral myself, get Force of Will, pitch Tinker. Like, I could have fought over the Doomsday, but I was really into the idea of killing them with Ancestral. And I had identified already that the only thing they could have in their hand, like I thought this was going to be past the turn pile, the Mull to 5, tapping out for the Doomsday. Opponent has to have exactly Gush here, or else they pass the turn. And if they pass the turn, I just vamp for Flusterstorm, and then I can never lose, because I'll be able to protect my Ancestral. Maybe if they didn't Mull to 5, or if they hadn't made their land drop yet, if they had more cards in hand, if they had a mana up, like off of a Mox or something, any of those variables, I probably just tutor Force of Will and then counter the Doomsday, but I really thought I was going to get a turn here to just lock it up. And here I am figuring out what's in their pile. I'm going to be checking for Force of Wills, Flusterstorms. You see me pulling those up. I'm doing the counterspell count because I know I have the Ancestral if they go for it here. And I know that there's no Force of Will in the hand, and I know that there is a Flusterstorm somewhere that I don't know about. There's the Gush. I could have also Force of Willed that, but with no mana floating, I'm just like, they gotta get through this pile somehow. Oh, they got Black Lotus, Ancestral Recall, exactly enough. I can Ancestral, so my Ancestral doesn't work here. They have blue floating. If I Ancestral them, it's the same as them Ancestraling them, and then they just fluster their own Ancestral. This is me double checking Flusterstorms. But they need to come up with another mana in this pile as well. I wasn't checking for Mox Sapphires because that doesn't really matter at this point. Like if they built the pile correctly, they do or they don't. And I'm going to pause it here because this is the weirdest moment of my whole tournament. And there was some discussion about it in the comments of my tournament report. But what happens here is my opponent plays Mox Sapphire. And he says, you can't hear it, but he says blue floating. And now I have realized I've lost, basically. Like, this is the third blue for Oracle plus Flusterstorm that I know are both in the hand. So the best thing I can do now is try to distract my opponent into making a mistake. My goal, what I'm about to do, here it comes. I'm going to cast Vamp Tutor, and I was hoping that he would fluster it just on some sort of knee-jerk or go autopilot, and did not. It just immediately was just like, yeah, resolved. Didn't even think about it, which is the correct play. And I picked a card, and then I'm just like, haha, it doesn't matter. You didn't fall for it. Fetch. And then I shuffled away the card that I just Vampiric Tutored for. Just put a land into play. And my opponent, you could kind of see his face right now. He's laughing, he's smiling. And I'm like, Zamp, Ancestral you. And here's where it gets weird. Watch his face and watch my face as this moves forward. He's checking, like, he's like, in response to Mox Sapphire? Oh, well, I guess you got it, man. And what must have happened is he either forgot that he had blue floating, or what I think is more likely, and I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but I think what probably happened is that in his brain, after this long day of Magic, he put the blue from Black Lotus into Thassa's Oracle already, just in his head. He's like, yeah, that blue is spent on Thassa's Oracle, and I need this Mox Sapphire to fluster with. And when he asks, right here, when he's pointing at the Mox Sapphire, I think he's thinking, well, if this is in response to the Mox, then I don't have the third blue to fluster with. And then shakes my hand and immediately shows me the Flusterstorm. We actually do have audio here that I want to play because this is kind of a strange moment.
Not that you call for it, there were just two decks for it. Ancestral target me? With the on the stack? Yeah, you got a good game.
Oh, the Flusterstorm's not in there? Oh, shit.
The Flusterstorm was in the pile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, the Flusterstorm was in hand with this on the stack. Oh.
You had two blue floating?
Yeah.
That's awkward.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. Okay, so you heard that happen. Basically, the second he could see it, I was like, whoa, where's the Flusterstorm? And he was like, it's in my hand. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm confused at that point. And then he starts to talk about the Mox that he's like, oh no, I had the blue floating. And you can see my face. I know I just got away with murder here. And this is where there was some, I don't want to call it debate. I don't want to call it confusion. I don't know. There was like a couple people in the comments of my tournament report who were like, you know what he meant. Why did you accept the concession? And at the moment that he conceded, I didn't know his hand. Like, maybe he boarded out a Flusterstorm. I didn't know it was there. He knows his hand better than me. Why would I say, whoa, don't concede? Don't you have the Flusterstorm? Like, I did all that stuff. I cast the bait Vampiric Tutor. I fetched basically at random in order to create confusion and hope he made a mistake, and then he did. Things like keeping track of your sequencing and your floating mana and whatever happened in my opponent's head where he had already bookmarked that blue in the pool for Oracle and thought he needed that Sapphire to cast Flusterstorm with, that is a mistake in competition. And it is fine if you, at home, find yourself playing for a Black Lotus and think, oh, no, I wouldn't accept that. And maybe that makes you better than me, but I did win a Black Lotus, and this was part of it. So, A, a player could concede however they want. B, I didn't know for sure. It wasn't face up that the Flusterstorm was there, even if I wanted to correct the play. C, even if I did know for sure, even if all the cards were face up, I would not have said, hey, you should just fluster this. Are you kidding me? This is a competitive endeavor. And I don't know, if you don't like that, maybe events with $500 entry are not for you. But my opponent, as you saw, like, once he figured out, he was like, oh, yeah, that's okay. And I'm not going to play the whole thing. Like, you can see there is another 9 minutes of video here where we do continue to have a conversation where, like, we kind of sit in silence for a minute or two, de-sideboarding, and then I'm like, you doing okay? That was kind of a big miss. And he was like, yeah, it was a long day. I was just happy to be here. Like, I'm going home with a Mox. Like, my opponent was disappointed in himself, but not like heartbroken or raging. He took it extremely well, which is another part of being a good competitor. Like, good losses, good wins. My opponent was a delight and my pleasure to play against him. We probably should have had a game 3 in any other timeline, but that wasn't this timeline. And with that, I'm going to go on to the top 4. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. If you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or advertising your events to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. Players just have to sign up online, then scan the QR code in-store. Give competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. The self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to TopDeck.gg so your community can relax and focus on playing Magic. Here is my top 4 match versus Kevin. Kevin was my only loss in the Swiss, and it is a good thing that the top 8 was open deck list, because in the Swiss, I thought he was just a Luris Saga control deck, but he's actually a Turbo Vault Key Luris combo deck. And they share a lot of cards, but like I said before, the faster combo decks are what you're worried about as Oath. Here he's got a Urza Saga start with a bunch of artifacts. I've got Cataxian Probe, Force Vamp Tutor is what's going on. That proxy at the top of the screen is a Mox Jet, so the Vamp Tutor is castable. I have my one of Strip Mine, and taking out the Saga here is probably worth doing. That represents a lot of damage. It represents half the combo, while the Vamp Tutor represents the other half. We see him top here and just immediately find another Vamp Tutor, or another Urza Saga, which is exactly what happened in our Swiss round as well. I stripped his Urza Saga and then immediately played another one, and then I was behind. So here I got to figure out how to navigate this Force of Will situation. There's a Mana Crypt, and I'm shoving Show and Tell, which does get the Force. That was just a face-up guaranteed exchange. That was going to happen. I believe I have Bolus's Citadel in my hand. I haven't gotten a good look, but if memory serves, I think I'm holding Citadel, not Atraxa, but I could totally be wrong. Who knows? And there's the one of Strip Mine. So from looking at the hand, opponent has come up with Replacement Saga, Strip Mine your basic, which is the power of Sensei's top. Like, that is a card that opponent chose to include in their deck. I fetch an Underground Sea, which does eat up my land drop. Ancestral Recall is a good hit, though I am gated on blue mana here. I have green mana if I have Oath, but I haven't cast that yet, so I must not have it. And then here come the constructs. These things are huge. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one's going to be 5, and then the tutor's going to be 6. Just like we talked about in the first round of this video against my round 1 opponent, the Saga tokens just show up and they're immediately enormous. And I'm at 14, so I don't have much time here. Tutor to Vexing Bauble, which turns off Bolus's Citadel even if I were to come up with one. I also have Mana Crypt in play. Losing a flip, I don't think that changes the clock, but it is still bad. It's in for 6, I'm at 8. An opponent's all in, no land drops. I believe they still have the Vamp Tutor in hand. I don't think that's been cast. But they know what they need to do here, and it's just hit me one more time, and it is going to work. I'm getting little glimpses of my hand. I see like a Forbidden Orchard in there, but not much really going on. Oko, Elk my Mana Crypt. I'm going to try to chump block and get one more turn out of this. This also means that Crypt won't flip, and they're going to Vamp Tutor in the upkeep. All they have to do is find an answer to Mana Crypt, and they win. But they do only have a Mox Ruby in play, which doesn't cast many spells in their deck. So they draw for Vamp, and then have Karakas plus Portable Hole. And that was the whole hand, and we're dead. We were way behind anyway, but yeah, Vamp Tutor. I mean, that's why the black tutors are good. Whatever card you need, here it is. We can see the phones out on the table. We're looking at the list. And even more so than a deck like Doomsday that is really single-minded about what it's trying to do. When you're against any sort of control deck or non-linear deck, trying to figure out what they're going to cut first, in addition to what they're going to bring in, is pretty essential. And this is my first real chance against Kevin. In the Swiss, I didn't know what he was on. It just killed me. My deck just didn't function through a force of will, and then I died. And now I can actually see his whole list. I know that he's Turbo Vault, not just Lura Saga. I know what his hate's going to be. You can see me pulling a bunch of Oath of Druids to the front of my deck. I'm boarding out a lot of them. His opponent has a bunch of Containment Priests, a bunch of Grafdigger's Cages, and my deck can do other stuff. I could just become Oko control with a ton of artifact removal. I actually move Oath of Druids and Show and Tells in and out of the deck a lot when I'm sideboarding with this strategy, which might seem weird because the deck is called Oath and Tell. You're just boarding out all the namesake cards, but that's what I'm talking about when I say Oath is a control deck with a clunky combo at its core. If you want to just become a control deck, you can shave on the clunky combo at the core. We can also see something that is, no offense to my opponent here, but a bit of a bleed, especially with open deck lists. My opponent has 2 piles of 5 cards in front of him. Are these the cards coming out and the cards coming in? If I know 5 cards are coming in and 5 cards are coming out, that makes it easier for me to solve what 5 cards do I think I don't have to play around in the main deck. And there's usually some stuff like very obvious stuff where it's like Containment Priest is coming in, but are they going to bring in like Veil of Summer and the extra Portable Hole and like this kind of fringe stuff that could have use in the matchup, but isn't very obvious. But if I know 5 cards came in and 5 cards came out, I can figure out what the non-obvious cards are. A lot of hyper-competitive people just shuffle their entire sideboard into their deck and pull out the worst 15 cards between every sideboard game to make sure they never give up that information. I don't do that, but I also don't lay out clean piles of what's coming in and out when I'm playing. I try to sneak it into my deck without making it obvious. I've kept 7 here. My opponent is mulling to 6. I haven't gotten a good look at my hand on the camera yet. And as you can see, we are at the table without the more advanced setup. This is just a face-down camera, and we get what we get. Opponent has kept 6. I've got a Bayou and a pass. I think I remember this game leading on my second best land because I know they're a Wasteland deck. Like I see Underground Sea in my hand, and that was probably more important to me than the Bayou was. And then there's the sea, and I did get Wastelanded. Opponent has a Black Lotus and no land. So I take this opportunity to just blast off that Black Lotus. And I expect them to flash a Containment Priest here, and that does happen. But I did just put them to 0 mana. And it's way better to force the action with that, with the Abrupt Decay, because if they do something like draw Lorien Revealed, then they could sack for white, cycle for a land, and then still cast Containment Priest on their terms. And here I am casting Show and Tell into the Containment Priest. This is where I was confused last game. I said I think I have Bolas' Citadel, not Atraxa. I was actually remembering this game because I can Show and Tell a Bolas' Citadel in to a Containment Priest and be fine. And that Show and Tell might have been bait. My opponent could have read that as bait to check on counters. They could have read it as I forgot Containment Priest is there. There's a lot of things they could have done, but they immediately gave me the credit that I know what I'm doing and snapped off the Force of Will. And here you see me time walking into my 6th mana. I'm just trying to hardcast this Bolas' Citadel and get to work. And I went land go because I want to play Citadel with my land drop still available. And opponent has found Valerian Academy this game, so they still have no mana. At this point, I'm assuming their hand is full of pitch interaction, just a bunch of Force Wills and stuff. Because that would make sense considering how the game has unfolded. Why would they keep a hand with no mana sources? And here I am with my Hardcast Bolus to Citadel. And it just resolves. I am as surprised as anyone. Run Abrupt Decay off the top, kill the Priest. Hit my land drop, it's a fetch land, so I get another look, and bang, there's Atraxa. I'm at 3 life. Here come the Atraxa cards. Ancestral Oath, Demonic Tutor. Alright, opponent has just conceded. Classic Vintage player. The second they saw that I didn't whiff, they were just done. And that was a Vintage non-game based on opponent keeping a disruptive hand. I mean, they had Wasteland and Kadema Priest and Black Lotus, and it just did not come together for them. I fear what that hand may have been if they had hit a land drop, because it wasn't pitch interaction and it wasn't lands, so it must have been really good spells that cost 1. We both kept 7s. I could see in my hand I have at least 2 lands in Ancestral Recall, and I just drew Black Lotus for turn. I don't know if you caught that on the camera. My draw was Black Lotus, and now I'm in the tank. I was pretty sure what I was going to do turn 1 was just island past Ancestral in your upkeep, but drawing that Lotus now unlocks the whole world to me. And I'm just moving cards around, figuring out what this means now. And I lead on Lotus, which is always a scary moment, because if opponents just like Spell Pierce, that sucks. But the Lotus was in. And I have Demonic Tutor with 1 black floating. And here, what I'm setting up, my hand has Abrupt Decay in it. What I'm trying to do here is I'm going to get Oath and assume that my opponent has Containment Priest, which means they won't fight over my Oath. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to solve this puzzle one piece at a time, which is, I don't care about Priest till I have Oath, but I don't need Oath till I can answer Priest, and I don't need to answer Priest unless I have Oath. So I'm holding the answer to Priest. Now let's get an Oath into play right now when my opponent thinks it's okay. Yeah, they're just representing white colorless. Very obviously, here's Containment Priest. Oh no, you got me. And there's a Wasteland. And there's Time Vault tap. That's actually terrifying because, like I keep saying, Oath is a control deck with a combo tucked into it, this clunky combo core in the middle. My opponent is kind of a combo deck with a lot of control elements, and they just stuck half their combo. And then Urza's Saga that they just played is the other half. So I'm under real pressure at this point. And they just time walked. So basically, I am dead if I don't win on my next turn from basic island in play. Saga goes up to 2. They're cycling Lorien Revealed. The Lorien Revealed is specifically going to get Tropical Island, the 1 green source in their whole deck, which is important here. Because they're about to play from their hand a Haywire Might, which can exile my Oath. And then I just have basic island versus dead on board. And they attacked with Priest. They have not exiled Oath yet. I have this Mox Pearl, Forbidden Orchard, and I'm just kind of like, well, Time Walk, I guess. Let's take another look. And right here is the moment I knew I was doing great. I passed into my walk turn, and I wish the face cam was on so you could kind of see how I'm soft selling this a little bit. Like, I don't want to act like I Hollywooded my way into this win, but it was non-zero. Like, I do my best to kind of soft sell body language, like that Time Walk, just like, yeah, I guess I'll throw this away, you know, might as well take another draw. I'm super dead here. I wasn't saying all that, but I was trying to convey that with my body language. And then just like, yeah, walk turn. And as soon as we get into my walk turn, you see me untap quickly, immediately tap on the Oath and say, upkeep trigger. Because they had another window there to exile the Oath in my end step before we went into my walk turn. But Oath trigger on the stack, long goodbye your Containment Priest, give you a Spirit. And all of this is so perfect because if I didn't have Forbidden Orchard, if that was just Underground Sea, I would kill the Priest, they could sack Haywire Might, and then they don't have more creatures than me. I'm not representing Abrupt Decay, which is, I have 2 Abrupt Decays, 1 long goodbye in my deck. This is the 1 outer versus the 2 outer. And I'm sure my opponent was thinking, like, there's not green-black over there, or else they would have used Haywire Might. This had to be Long Goodbye, and it had to be off Forbidden Orchard for any of this to work. And I have a couple things I want to talk about here. The screen's just going to stay frozen because there's a lot to discuss. The Haywire Might is actually a 50-50 here. Like, it would be easy to say opponent just brain farted and didn't do what they were supposed to do. But Haywire Might answers Bolas's Citadel, which is my other out here. The two cards in my deck that still have text on them right now are Long Goodbye and Tinker. And if they use Haywire Might to kill Oath of Druids and I Tinker them, they're going to feel silly. If they leave Haywire Might in play and I have Long Goodbye, they feel silly. And that's what this looks like. And I didn't recognize that because I can see the cards in my hand, of course. Like, I know I don't have Tinker, and I'm just like, oh, please don't activate the Haywire Might. But opponent may, and I've not spoken to my opponent, I don't know what they were actually thinking here, but it is actually a 50-50 of cards to play around, not a complete brain fart to not activate the Haywire Might here. But I do have Long Goodbye, and it's off Forbidden Orchard. Another thing I want to talk about while we're paused here, the number one question by a lot during my prep for and tournament report and when the list got posted for this event and everything, I had over a dozen people ask me, why are you playing one copy of Long Goodbye and 2 Abrupt Decays? Why not just 3 Abrupt Decays? And the answer to that question is that all of the Containment Priest decks play Wasteland. This is just Richard Garfield's beautiful mana system that changed the whole gaming industry at work. Why would I play a card that is worse? It's because it's easier to cast. Why ever play Pithing Needle when Disrupting Flute exists? Well, the Flute costs 2. Pithing Needle costs 1. It's slightly worse, but it costs less. Why would you play Grey Ogre when Hurloon Minotaur exists? Because Grey Ogre's easier to cast. Like, this is just fundamental Magic the Gathering here. And then understanding why you might want specifically Long Goodbye over Abrupt Decay. And the answer is, you won't always have green and black mana when you need it. And if you look in my graveyard, there is a tropical island there because it was wastelanded. That would have been the mana required if this was just my 3rd copy of Abrupt Decay. It's not always going to work out this perfectly. Sometimes you're going to lose to Time Vault with Long Goodbye in your hand. But other times, you get to do exactly this. Okay, I'll press play now. That was a lot of talking. The opponent is understandably making a lot of faces right now, pretty bummed out that they lost that coin flip on Tinker versus Long Goodbye. And Atraxa triggers, but I am still in check to the Time Vault key. And I just run a Null Rod off the Atraxa. I actually have Null Rod in my hand already. I played 2 copies, but opponent didn't know that. And now here is the other one. And I have exactly 1 land off the Atraxa with my 1 untapped land. And I found Force Blue card plus land Null Rod there. So now I can Null Rod with Force Protection, draw for turn, and slam Null Rod, which turns off one of their mana sources, the Time Vault. They do decide to Haywire Might the Oath on the way out while it could still activate, but they are now way behind. With Oath gone, I do know that they play 1 Caracas because I've seen their list. And if they could bounce Atraxa here, I don't think I have a way to immediately present it again. And they could start rallying this back, but I am way ahead right now, and they are basically on Caracas or bust because they know I have Force Blue card in hand as well. Their Saga got Vexing Bauble, which does turn off my Force of Will, which is really smart because they have Merchant Scroll in hand, which means they could get Ancestral Recall, which can dig for the Caracas, and they know they just turned off Force of Will in my hand. So this was actually a really great sequence. They are playing to their outs extremely well. And then here's the Ancestral, and I just have my fingers crossed. No Caracas, no Caracas, no Caracas, no Caracas. And there is a land that is not Caracas, just a strip mine, and that's fine. The Forbidden Orchard's done its job. I'm ready to party. Atraxa actually has to hit 4 times here because they were at 22. Or I have to come up with more power and toughness somewhere, which usually means Oko. There's not a lot of power and toughness in this deck outside of Atraxa. There's a portable hole. And here I'm about to read this thing just to make sure I remember how it works. In the early days of Oblivion Ring style effects, like if you kill actual Oblivion Ring when it's in play before its trigger resolves, the permanent is exiled forever. more modern templating, it's not two separate triggers, it's one trigger. So I let it resolve, hit it with the trigger on the stack, which means the null rod is never actually exiled at all. So there's no window to tap the Sapphire or draw a card with Bauble or anything. There's the backup null rod just in case they find another answer to one of them. And they packed it up. Just a very tight sequence of opponent choosing a 50-50 coin flip and choosing wrong, and me drawing my 1 of Long Goodbye compared to my 2 of Abrupt Decay in exactly that spot where I needed it, casting it off Forbidden Orchard. That was about as tight of a squeeze as you're ever going to get. Next is the finals. Let's go. The BoshNRoll channel is proudly partnered with the Resleevables.
Good. All right, here we go, gang.
In this YouTube series, hosts Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan take us on a set-by-set journey through the good, the bad, and the ugly of Magic's history. Each episode is a focused deep dive into the facts about a set's design and release, the Magic lore expressed through the cards in that set, Tournament Edition gameplay videos featuring products and Pro Tour decks of the era, an award show that shouts out the best and weirdest cards of the set, and a final grade for the set's overall success. Whether you want a history lesson or a nostalgia hit, The Resleevables has it at youtube.com/theresleevables. I am now in the finals against Hank Song, who is somebody I've known many years and gotten dinner with many times, a person that I like a lot, powerful wizard, has at least one Eternal Weekend top 8 on his resume, and he is on Combo Luris. And he's even more combo-centric than Kevin was in my top 4 match. Hank's build had more Mox Opals, more Vexing Baubles. He was really trying to send it a lot harder than Kevin, who was more on the control side. Which is great to know with the open deck list, because once again, if I see a Luris, I'm probably going to think it's a Luris Saga control matchup at default, unless I have information to tip me off in some other direction. And Luris Saga control is a matchup that I like when I'm Oath, because it's slow as hell, and eventually they need to put a creature into play to win. And those are both things that favor Oath. But knowing that it's a hyper-fast turbo vault key deck actually changes everything that I need to know. You'll also see our standings. I was 5th and Hank was 6th. This is the first time I've been on the play in the top 8, which is actually going to change everything. And right now, we could see Hank thinking about his mulligan, and he's waffling between Treasure Cruise or Wasteland to put on the bottom of his deck, and he ended up going with the Wasteland, which again is going to be huge. I have Gitaxian Probe, and we see this hand, and let's pause to look at it for a second, because we've got Urza Saga Soul Ring, that's only colorless mana, and then Lauren Revealed can fix for turn 2 to start unlocking this. I think I said Treasure Cruise a minute ago. It was Dig Through Time, not Cruise. He was thinking between Dig Through Time and Wasteland to put on the bottom. But the Lauren Revealed unlocks the Ancestral Recall. Dress Down is really good versus Atraxa. He could put that in off of my Show and Tell and just give me a 7/7 that's a lot easier to deal with than a 7/7 plus a bunch of cards. He could respond to an Oath trigger, and I can just decline to Oath if that happens, but it still functions like Time Walk. Like, Dress Down's really good against me, Ancestral Recall's always good, and if the game goes crazy long, Dig Through Time will Baron me. And this is just an accelerated Saga besides all that. Like, you could just go Saga, Soul Ring, Construct, if he doesn't want to do anything else. But there is one important weakness of this hand, which is that it only has colorless mana, and only Urza Saga, which is going to matter a lot in a moment. I'm going to try to pause when I draw off the Gitaxian Probe. I'll try to catch it in real time. But seeing the card that I draw off the Gitaxian Probe is going to make this game really interesting. Okay, here we go. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little blurry. That is Strip Mine. It's the 1 of Strip Mine, and that's the card I just drew off Gitaxian Probe. And I just went Strip Mine pass because Urza Saga doesn't actually tap for mana. It has a trigger that has to resolve before Saga can tap for mana. And if I just cack off the Strip Mine on the Saga in response to its enters the battlefield trigger, Hank can't cast that Soul Ring. And he has no other mana that I'm aware of unless he draws into it naturally off the draw steps. And there it is, bang. Immediately do that, and he just passes back. And that's good news to me, because if he could have done anything else, he would have. So not only does that tell me that my play worked, but it told me that he doesn't have it for the future either. Like, whatever he ends up having, it's going to come off the top from here. And it's just a Mox Opal with no friends. There was also no interaction in Hank's hand. It was really in on that Ancestral Recall and see what happens from there. And he's had 2 draw steps. I know one of those draws was Mox Opal, so he has 1 unknown card in his hand right now, while I'm making decisions this turn. And Tropical Island go. Vamp Tutor. This is going to set up probably Tinker, because I know he has the Dress Down. So I don't really want to show and tell for 2 reasons. One, because I know the Dress Down will freeze my Atraxa. And 2, because the Dress Down is a cantrip. And the second he finds a land, I might actually be in a lot of trouble. So I'm trying to be super cagey about what I give Hank access to here. And Tinker is my best bet to go over the top of the more dedicated combo deck than me, like we saw in that Doomsday matchup earlier. And here I am shoving Tinker with a land drop still available. It just resolves, which means Hank did not draw Force of Will in the 2 unknown cards since I saw his hand. And I believe I do have Atraxa and Show and Tell in my hand at this point. I just don't want to take that route. Got a Mox Emerald off the top. Play my land for turn and pass. My top card right now is Force of Will. So it sucks to miss on Bolas's Citadel, like not just run away with the game, but knowing that the next spell is countered too is really powerful. And I just played a land from my hand and passed again. It's another Force of Will on top. I've mentioned a few times already in this video that Oath is the worst Bolas's Citadel deck in the format, but it's still friggin' Bolas's Citadel. If I both didn't play a land off the top and didn't cast a spell off the Citadel, you know it's a counterspell. There's nothing else it could be. So I just ran Black Lotus off the top. Right now I'm in the tank because I know my top card is Show and Tell, and I know he puts in Dress Down, and I know that's a draw, but I would also like to start applying pressure, and there is an Atraxa in my hand. And I just roll the dice at this point. I have 2 Force of Wills in my hand. Gets the Dress Down draw. Nothing happens off Atraxa, but she is here. And I pass. And Hank has not come up with the land in the Dress Down draw or his draw step. Vintage decks have insanely corny land counts, like 11, 12, 13 lands. It's really greedy. And you can see Hank with Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Mox Opal. Lorien revealed that he doesn't have the first mana to get it started with. Like, it really did come down to just me finding the Strip Mine off the top of my deck and him having exactly Urza Saga and me having Probe to know to play around it. Like, if I didn't probe him, I would not have just gone Strip Mine go. All of those pieces had to line up here. And Hank finally finds a land. Lucky. Lucker noob. It's top decking like crazy. That is, of course, a joke. He's so far behind here. I have at least 2 Force Wills in my hand. There's the Soul Ring. That's not my fight. Vexing Bauble. I need to counter because Bolas's Citadel casts spells for free. That's kind of Bolas's Citadel's whole thing. So I spent 5 mana for Force of Will on that. It's got 1 floating. Plays the Mana Vault and the Ancestral Recall. Shout out to Hank's beautiful all foil and alpha deck. By the way, look at the corners on all those black borders cards. That's alpha. And there's the other Force of Will on the Ancestral. Atraxa takes another chunk. And we are having a hard time with the iPad here. This was a theme throughout the match. Hank, understandably, slightly on tilt, just try to like speed tap his life total down when I hit him with Atraxa, but he was going too fast for the iPad to read. And then the iPad was freaking out, and then it was tilting him more. And we all had a good laugh about it. Everybody standing around. It was in good fun, but it was definitely a twist of the dagger that our life total thing that we are responsible for was also slightly malfunctioning. Okay, Hank's got a Time Walk here. The Time Walk does bring Saga to maturity, but I just run a Force of Negation off the top with the Bolas's Citadel, and he has had enough. That entire game made possible by Cataxian Probe. It's hard to believe that Cataxian Probe was just a multi-format staple for years. We were just allowed to do this in like Legacy and Modern as a 4-of for quite some time. What a stupid card that is. And here I am with the deck list up and my beautiful pineapple deck box from Ultimate Guard. And we've got our 7s for game 2. Looks like Hank's hand is full of Power, Gataxian Probe, and Tolarian Academy. It's his turn to probe me. My hand is heckin' insane. Just Ancestral Recall or Tinker with Force Backup. Obviously, I need to find some action to cast the Tinker. I need an artifact to sacrifice, but turn 1 Ancestral, find the gas to Tinker. I have the 1-of Strip Mine again, which could slow down Urza Saga lines, and I don't mind pitching Oko to Force of Will at all in these early exchanges. Oko's so insane in the stack. Obviously, Oko's just a broken card, but being blue and green for Force of Will and Force of Vigor is just so perfect. And then turning Grafdigger's Cage into an Elk, also perfect. Just everything's perfect. Okay, Hank explodes out with 6 mana here. 2 cards left in hand. He casts Lorien Revealed. And I am going to choose to force this. Pitching the Oko. When your hand has this much mana, that mana comes at the expense of other cards. And once again, I just top decked Thoughtseize, which was not in my hand a second ago when I got probed. So top of the deck, hooking me up here. Hank's got 2 cards left. I just spent 2 cards to make sure he didn't get 3 cards. And now Thoughtseize is going to take a peek at what the next best card in the hand is. And we've got Strip Mine plus another Lorien Revealed. So the hand Hank kept was tons of mana, 2 reloads. And I've just dealt with both reloads, and now all he's got is tons of mana. Like, he could just get and cast Lurrus here, but you're not even always incentivized to do that because getting and casting Lurrus turns on Oath of Druids. So he got Lurrus but didn't cast it, which is a common play pattern when these Lurrus decks slow down because, like I said earlier in the video, the Lurrus decks frequently have to put a creature into play to win, and that turns on Oath of Druids. So I strip mine the Tolarian Academy. Hank draws the 3rd Lorien Revealed, but now can't cast it because the Academy's gone, goes and grabs the Tundra. And I'm hanging out with Ancestral Recall, Tinker, and Forbidden Orchard in my hand, and I just played another Orchard. This is a dangerous and terrible spot for me because, like I also said a couple times before, Forbidden Orchard is a terrible, clunky land when you're in these control games. And I got my Flusterstorm countered, which means that my Ancestral didn't resolve. And I gave him a creature in the meantime, which means now he's not incentivized to sandbag Lurrus because there's a creature to play anyway. However, he knows I have Tinker, but I do have to keep piling 1/1s into him to get Bolas' Citadel. My land drop is spent, and he has 5 power in play. If the Citadel doesn't run good right now, I could be too far behind to come back. But he is empty over there. Whatever happens, happens at this point. And taking a look at the top card, Nature's Claim, the Urza Saga. Let's take a little pressure off there. And Atraxa. Too easy. And then we just run it. Black Lotus, Null Rod. Now I can't get comboed. Time Walk, the ability to cast Time Walk, Abrupt Decay, more insulation against combo. Time Walk, Lotus. Looks like I'm taking Mystical Tutor over Abrupt Decay here. Yeah, I'm on offense at this point. Mystical Tutor plus Bolas' Citadel is another combo, because you just get the card immediately. Okay, use the Lotus. I have a blue floating. I could cast Mystical Tutor with that. There's now a walk turn in the bank. Mystical for Abrupt Decay, which I can either cast right now, kill Lurrus, and then maybe keep running with the Citadel, or I can just go to my walk turn, draw that, make sure I don't get Time Vaulted, which is what I end up doing. Right now I'm just checking boxes. How can I lose this game? The answer is Time Vault. And now I have Abrupt Decay in my hand, so that's not even going to happen. Correctly identified that Lurrus doesn't matter. There's not even a thing that could be cast off Lurrus in the graveyard. Citadel casts Show and Tell, which puts in Misty Rainforest. Literally just trying to get through cards here. Find another Atraxa to reload with. At this point, when I'm this far ahead, I just want to make sure I stay ahead. It's okay to burn off an Atraxa to the Legend rule. Both some land, Show and Tell, Oko, Boseiju. Boseiju covers my bases additionally. Now I'm really not going to lose to Time Vault. We've got Force Blue card, Boseiju, Oko in hand. On top of the Abrupt Decay that's already been revealed. Just completely rolled up here. Make my land drop from the top, and I still have the fetch land from the Show and Tell. That can shuffle again if I want to keep going. But I'm just going to pass the turn with 7 unbeatable cards in hand and Atraxa. And Hank is just in top deck mode. There's a Demonic Tutor. And I am going to force this because Demonic Tutor could get Karakas, and I can't force the Karakas. This is a clear spot where being aware of cards in the format and being aware of cards in the deck inform the classic question of do you force the tutor or the thing it gets? Because here, it wouldn't have worked to get the thing that it gets. These life totals are definitely wrong at this point. I think we were struggling with the iPad or the overlay was struggling with something. Okay, here we go. They're catching up. And there's a null rod off the top, cutting off 75% of Hank's mana and also every combo out. And Hank is playing it out because this is it. We're not saving time for anything. We're not, Caracas off the top could stabilize him at 1. With Luris in play, gaining life, starting to turn it around. He does have one good draw here. I found a Demonic Tutor off of Bolas's Citadel. Just trying to find what box might still be unchecked. Like if he does draw Caracas, I could Beseiju it. How do I get another Atraxa down? What am I actually worried about here? What could kill me? And Demonic Tutor just closes whatever loop was left. And Thoughtseize You for good measure. Take Force of Will from the hand. I did not know that what the card was, but glad that's gone. Land drop. It's a fetch land. Can keep going. Sapphire that doesn't work. And pass the turn. You're at 1. I got a handful of gas. And once again, Ancestral Recall. I am going to counter this because it could draw the Caracas, and I had a Flusterstorm on top for the win. And that is my commentary on my NYSE matches. Everyone, thanks for watching. Here I get handed a Black Lotus immediately. That's a good moment. Check the condition. It's not great, but it is a Black Lotus. Everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the Patreon. I promise I'm done talking about this tournament now. Thanks for putting up with multiple videos about it. I'm out of here. See you next time.